Hey everybody, Lieutenant Joe here for the Blue Heart Podcast, a place for law enforcement to get together. All right, so first of all, let's thank our sponsors, Blue 360 Media, RiotTint.com, and MedicalEssentialDiagnostics.com. Three great companies that support you, the men and women of law enforcement. So what did I want to talk about? Um, Concealed compartments in cars. All right, so right now, with my publisher, Blue 360 Media, we are launching a complete brand new online video training division. All right, and I'm going to be helping put that all together. So I have quite a lot of video training that we had put together over the years that we're updating and sending out. So one of the first programs we're going to put out is a thing called Patrol Tactics. All right, so Patrol Tactics, what is that all about and who's it for? Patrol Tactics is designed for uh, patrol officers, obviously, street detectives, street drug units, anybody that's out there. It is designed to help officers who are brand new in the police academy to give them all kinds of information that could be helpful to them when they hit the streets and get running, right? Give them a little head start. Things that we don't usually talk about for a while, you don't come across for a while in your career. I tried to put that all down. If you've been on the road for a while, this program is very helpful to you because, first of all, you've experienced a lot of things. You will understand a lot of the ideas and the concepts. I'm just trying to flesh them out for you and give you some more information in the background. And so, one of the things that I talk about in there is concealed compartments. Now, I remember years ago, I went to a training course. I was a cop for, I don't know, 8, 9 years. And I had come across a lot of people that I stopped in their cars. And I said, I have a feeling that just the conversation with the person led me to believe there's something in this car. I just can't find it. I know it's here, but I can't find it. I looked and looked and, son of a gun. And then I took this course on concealed compartments. It was eye-opening to say the very least. The officer at the time that was teaching this was a New York State trooper, Jason Robles. Now, many of you have taken Jason's course. He teaches for HIDA all across the country. He's an amazing young man, and he was the go-to guy for hidden compartments. Well, I took his course, and I was dumbfounded at the things that I missed right out in the open that I just realized as he was teaching about these things to look for, the signs of a hidden compartment. How can you tell? And I said, son of a gun, all these things that I missed out completely. I probably missed a lot of packages, guns, and weapons over the time. So some of those things, we're going to talk a highlight here for you, is keep in mind there are very sophisticated hidden compartment areas, and then there are not very sophisticated hidden compartment areas. In many of the cars that we come across out there, there are natural voids in the body, right? Voids that can be exploited by simply removing a panel or a door handle or a cup holder in the center console or underneath the center console. There's lots of things like that that we can come across. But I remember Jason as he was teaching, and one of the things he said, he showed up in front of the class and he held up this. This is a old-fashioned cell phone case that I'm holding here, right? It's got a magnet in one end here and it just snaps closed, just like that. You see that. And he holds up a black permanent marker like this here. And then he held up a star head screwdriver. He says, when I see these things in a car, sitting on the floor of a car, in the driver's compartment somewhere, if I see this combination of things, a cell phone case with a magnet, usually with no phone in it, a black permanent marker, and a star head. He goes, I know there's a trap in the car. And I said, okay, well, how do you know that? What the hell's this got to do with anything? Well, this is a more sophisticated kind of a trap, but we can see some signs that there is a trap. So he started talking about it. He goes, well, first of all, if you look on a car, the screws that hold the molding and hold the things underneath the rug and all that stuff together are usually star head screws. So How many times do you need to unscrew the molding in your car, or unscrew the door handle of your car? Very rare you ever have to do that. Now, maybe you're a guy or a girl that likes to work on cars and you say, I do it all the time. Well, good for you. Most of us do not. Most of us do not go unscrewing anything in our car. So when you see that, that's an indicator that somebody has been doing something with the screws in the car. Okay, that's one thing. Then I said, Jason, what's everything else? What's the other? Okay. He goes, what's the black marker for? Permanent marker. He goes, when I unscrew the door panel or the molding and I run wires for a sophisticated trap, one of them ones where you touch a button, turn on the air conditioning, put on the stereo, and the dashboard pops up. He goes, that's a very sophisticated thing, but you need to set the electronics up so that it triggers the switch, right? That makes the trap work, right? That's what they call them, traps, if you're not familiar with that word. Hidden compartments, traps, that kind of thing. He says, so what happens is you use that star head screwdriver, you remove the screws, you run your wires, you do whatever, then you put them back in. And then oftentimes your screwdriver will have scraped the paint off the screw, right? And if a cop was looking at it, you would say, hey, wait a minute, that might draw your attention. Why is these screws coming in and out in all these different places? So you take the marker and you write on top of the screws so that they're black again, right? It's to throw you off the cop so you don't notice anything. I said, okay, that makes sense. Okay, well, people opening, you could take the door handle out and there's a big void behind there, right? So maybe you put it back up with one or two screws, and when you get where you're going, you unscrew it, and you reach in there, you grab your dope, your gun, whatever it is. I said, what's the empty phone case for? And he said, well, that is part of a more sophisticated trap. But if you see this in the car, what's the purpose? Especially if there's no phone in it. Why would you have this around? This is like an old-fashioned kind of a case, right? Because what happens is they may have a professionally put in trap, the dashboard under the seat, the front of the dashboard, underneath somewhere in that car. And you have to set up the mechanics. So maybe you have to turn on the rear defrost, you have to turn on the stereo, you have to put the lights on, and then you take the magnet from the phone case and you wave it in front of the trap, and that closes the circuit, and the dashboard pops up. And there's your drugs, your guns, money, whatever you have in there. All right. So that's what makes it. So when I see those three things in a car, especially if there's no phone in here, I know there's a trap in the car because that's what they're using it for. And these are three innocuous things you may not notice. So keep that in mind. All right. Another thing, some more simple ones. All right. So we talked about the door handles. Check the door handles when you're looking. Are they loose? Are there marks on the screws? I remember stopping, actually, I was a supervisor at the time, and a couple of my cops, pretty good officers, male and female officer, had stopped a guy that we believed was probably selling quantity of marijuana, right? At the time. Now, marijuana was illegal, so that was still a big deal. And these officers stopped him, and they could smell dope. They couldn't find it. So they called me, hey, Lieutenant, could you come over here? So I swing over. I could smell it, raw marijuana, right? I could smell that in there. It's not burned marijuana, wasn't roaches, wasn't a half of a joint. It was raw marijuana. And we looked all around that car, and the kid says, no, I got no dope in the car. I got no pot. I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm looking around, and I just happened to notice that the dome light, he had a big dome light on the roof of his car, inside the car, right? A big dome light. And I just noticed that the marking on the ceiling where the dome light was screwed in was, you could see the line where it had been moved. The dome light had been moved. And I looked at that and I reached up and I gave it a wiggle, and it wiggled, and I moved it, boom, and it popped out. And up inside that little bit of a void was a couple of ounces of marijuana stuffed up in there. The kid was really surprised. When we interviewed him later on, he said, he'd been stopped by dozens of cops and nobody ever found it. And he says, how'd you find it? I said, I just noticed that it was a little out of place. He didn't put it back in place properly. And I just noticed it was out of place. So attention to detail with these things are important. We had an officer who was stopping a group of four men leaving the city of Asbury Park, heading back up to North Jersey, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. She stopped these guys, four guys in this car, and she gets them out of the car. And she's talking to them, and these guys are like, oh, no, we were just down in Asbury at a club. We're having a good time. We're heading home. way up North Jersey, to a community that is known for crime in New Jersey, Paterson, New Jersey. And we had had a lot of drug gangs infiltrate our area from Paterson. So that was one of the first things that clued her in. Okay, it's 2:30 in the morning. She asked, what club are you coming from? And they weren't all agreed with what club they were at. So now she said, okay, something's up here. She called for backup. Backup officer shows up. Now she starts looking around in the car. She doesn't see any drugs. She doesn't smell any drugs. The guys are all like, you can search the car all you want. Well, on the side doors in the front passenger side and the driver side, and the two sides in the back door were aftermarket speakers for music, right? She's like, okay, well, that's cool. So she started looking at them. She remembered an in-service that we did about look at these things. She's looking all around and she gets to the back passenger side and she looks and it's out of place. It's loose. She pulls it open and boom, there was a loaded 9mm right behind the door. Well, with that, the other officer, okay, holds everybody at a bay. Every one of those speakers had a some kind of a clip on it that you could slide that open, pop that right open. Every one of them had a loaded handgun right inside that door. And it turns out that these guys came down to Asbury and they were going to hit a guy, a rival drug guy, and they couldn't find him and they were on their way back. So they had 4 loaded guns and 1 officer on the side of the road. And these guys didn't think the officer would find him, and she did, right? So these things can be anywhere. Keep your eyes open. I know there were officers that I sent when I was the training lieutenant. I sent them to this course, and they came back, and within a couple of months, they found hidden compartments in the trunk of the car. One officer found $30,000 cash that he says, I never would have found it if I didn't know what I was looking for. All right, so these hidden compartments can be very sophisticated or not sophisticated at all. You need to know what's out there so that you can find these things, because all kinds of stuff is transported. Right. One of the last things we'll talk about is tires on a car. They talk about that. So you might have somebody in your town who's not very well off, and they got a junk box car, but they have to go to work. They have a job, and they get stopped, and right, they get hunked out for busted window. They get hunked out for bald tires. So they put new tires on a car, right? And you stop this car and it's older, it's not in great shape, but it's got new tires on it. You probably don't think much of it because it's a local guy, you know him, and he works at the store up here and he tells you that. So I bought tires because I got 6 tickets for my tires. But if you get a car from Florida, from the South, from Arizona, California, out west, and it's a kind of a junk box car and it's got brand new tires on it, that's something to not say that it's a vehicle carrying contraband, but why would you put brand new tires on a junky car? Well, because you have to send it on a long trip that's important, like a load of dope in the car, right? A couple kilos of coke, or you got some heroin or something, whatever has to go. It has to make it to Newark, New Jersey, and you don't want them getting pulled over for bad tires or having a flat and the car has to be left there. So that's something you look at. Also, body work to an older car. Right? I've had a lot of cars that some of them were junk boxes, some of them were nice cars you take care of right away. But if you see an older car, a junk box car, and it's got a brand new fender put on, you could see it's different than the other fenders. It looks like it was cleaned up and painted, but they didn't fix the whole car. Why would you do that? Well, a lot of times people smuggling things will take that fender off, load it with dope, drugs, guns, and money, put it back on, body putty it, and then paint it. And then you notice that the whole car is kind of beat up a little bit, but not that front fender. It looks beautiful. It just means you have to take a closer look. So when it comes to hidden compartments, there's lots of them out there. Lots of them out there. They can hide things anywhere that you can think of, right? So look underneath, look for floors that don't match. Right? If you look at the car, SUVs are good for this. You look in the back seat and it looks like the floor is an inch higher than you think it should be. It just looks out of place. Well, cars aren't made to look out of place, right? You look underneath it. If you see glue that's not a special kind of glue they use in a car, that are made at the manufacturing plant where General Motors and Ford and all these cars make their cars. They use a certain kind of glue to glue the rugs down. They got a different kind of glue. Maybe somebody was fixing up their car, but maybe they ripped up them rugs and there's a hidden compartment underneath there. In the backs of the seats, right? The backs of the seats, look all the way along the backs. Does it look like they come out, they come apart? Does the seat lift up and there's stuff underneath there? So look for anything like that. I forget what they call it, effectuators. These tubes that when you take your thing and you rub it across, boom, and it pushes things up. Look inside the vents in the front. Is it a vent? Can you see it underneath? Can you see it's a vent, or there's something blocking it? Hidden compartments are all over the place. They're used for all kinds of things. Funny story. We took off a drug dealer as a detective bureau. We had a search warrant for his car, his house, for his body, for his safe, for everything. We took him off and we found a lot of drugs and a lot of money. And it was a brand new Acura, big car, fully paid for. And we took it in, confiscated it, right? Forfeiture. And we won the car in court. We were using that car for 2 years, driving around in that car. And I forget, mechanically, our local mechanics, our agency mechanics are saying, listen, you got to take this to the Acura dealer. They're the only ones that could fix this. The computer's saying something problem. We took it up there. We dropped it off for them to repair it. And a day later, we get a phone call. Hey, could you send a cop up here? There's something wrong with the VIN number on this car. Now, that was the first thing. We're like, are you kidding? We have a re-VIN car. We didn't know it. We had the paperwork for it and everything. We go up there and he goes, not only is it re-VINed, but there's a hidden compartment here under the dashboard. And if you open it, there's stuff in there, right? So these guys were pretty smart. They showed us here this, that, and the other thing. But when we open it, the dashboard popped up. There were 2 loaded handguns in there and I think $5,000 or $6,000 in cash. We'd had this for 2 years. We were riding around with it. And it's not the first time I've heard that story. When you go taking cars off of people, make sure somebody who knows hidden compartments goes through them, right? Because it was a little embarrassing, I'll be honest with you, to find out, hey, we're riding around for 2 years with this nonsense. I heard a story about the head of a DEA unit. I won't say where, but same thing, driving around with a car for 4 years that was confiscated, and it had weapons in it that were used in a homicide, and there was cocaine in it, right? And they had it for a couple of years. Make sure if you confiscate a car, have somebody who knows hidden compartments go through it. All right, everybody, listen, be careful out there. Keep your eyes and ears open. Always be safe. Do the right thing. This is Lieutenant Joe for the Blue Heart Podcast.